river runs silent, but it knows the way. Through the bones of the forest where shadows play. An old sign swings on a rusted chain. Welcome to nowhere, where the ghosts remain. Whispers in the rafters, whispers in the trees, secrets in the soil, carried by the breeze. The town hides its story, buried down deep. It's the secrets they keep. It's the secrets they keep.
The rain started without warning, as if August had forgotten it wasn't September yet. The sky over Warsaw looked dull and heavy, like a sheet of lead pressed low over the city. Victoria sat by the window, her knees drawn up to her chest. Raindrops tapped softly against the glass, steady and quiet, almost soothing. Almost. She couldn't sleep. Something was changing. She could feel it. She didn't know what yet, but the stillness in the apartment, the strange tension in the air, it all felt like a warning, like something final was approaching. Her mother stood in the kitchen, staring at a mug of tea that had gone untouched for nearly 10 minutes. "Victoria," she said suddenly, "we need to talk." Victoria didn't turn around. The words sounded too serious to be harmless. "You won't be going back to school in Warsaw this year," her mother continued, her voice careful, measured. "You're going to live with your father in Cherry Valley." Victoria froze. She turned her head slowly, as if hoping she'd misheard. "What?" "I don't have another option. You know I signed that contract with the company in France. There will be travel, sometimes a week, sometimes longer. I can't leave you alone. And your dad," she hesitated. "He wants you back." "But," Victoria frowned, "why didn't anyone ask me what I wanted?" "Because sometimes decisions have to be made before there's time to ask," her mother said quietly. "And it's not just about school. It's about stability, about having someone there for you every day. Your father wants you with him." The word echoed uncomfortably in her mind, as if she were being pulled into the past, not starting something new. Cherry Valley. The town from her childhood. She remembered its scent more clearly than the smell of Warsaw streets after rain. Morning fog in the mountains, birds at sunrise, and the forest. She had always felt like it whispered, like it knew things. "There's nothing there," she said softly, almost to herself. "Just memories, and people who forgot me." "That's exactly why you should go," her mother said, meeting her eyes for the first time. "Maybe it's not a punishment, Victoria. Maybe it's a chance." Victoria let out a quiet, bitter laugh. "A chance for what? For everyone to remember how I froze during the 3rd grade play?" But deep down, she knew this wasn't just about her fear. She also knew the decision had already been made. Cardboard boxes had appeared in her room the day before, casually, innocently. "Just cleaning up," her mother had said. Victoria had known then. "Give it a chance," her mother said softly, her voice breaking just a little. "I know you'll be angry with me, but I'm not abandoning you. I just need to do something for myself, too." Victoria turned back to the window. The rain was falling harder now. Cherry Valley. She pictured the sign at the edge of town, "See you soon." She'd been 11 when she left. She hadn't cried then. She'd been too angry. Now, she still didn't cry. But something shifted inside her. Something heavy. Something that had been asleep for years. "What if no one remembers me there?" she whispered. "Then maybe they'll get to know you all over again," her mother said, sitting beside her. Victoria bit her lip. "And what if they remember me too well?" This time, her mother didn't answer, because there was nothing she could say. Warsaw had always felt loud to her, full of sound and light, voices overlapping, footsteps echoing off old apartment buildings and modern glass offices alike. But in these last few days, something was different. As if the city had grown quieter, as if it knew Victoria was about to leave. She wandered through the streets without much purpose, walking familiar routes, stopping by the same cafe near the subway station where she and her friends had once laughed until they cried, nodding at people from the neighborhood she'd known for years, even though she'd never really spoken to them. The same questions kept circling her mind, refusing to let go. How much had Cherry Valley changed? Did Lena still live there? What about Tom, the boy she'd built a treehouse with in the woods behind the school? Would they remember her? Or would she have to start over completely? And what if she didn't fit in anymore? She wasn't the same girl who used to run through her grandfather's orchard with a crown of dandelions on her head. Now she wore comfortable sneakers, carried a phone covered in keychains, and knew the subway map better than the names of trees. She knew how to survive in a concrete jungle, but could she survive in a place where people knew each other by name for 3 generations? Do I even belong there? On her last night before leaving, Victoria couldn't fall asleep. Her suitcases stood by the door, zipped shut, ready to go. Her room felt empty, unfamiliar. The walls, once covered in posters, seemed silent now. She took her final shower in that apartment, took one last look out the window at the city lights she knew so well. Just one more night, she thought, turning off the lamp. And then she fell asleep. She dreamed. Not the way she usually did. Not fragmented, not colorful, not chaotic. This time the dream was clear, disturbingly real. She stood inside an old, shadowed room. Rough stone walls rose around her, thin strands of cobwebs clinging to the corners. The air smelled of dust, age, and something else she couldn't quite name. In one corner, at a crooked table made of heavy wood, sat a boy. He looked to be in his early 20s. His dark hair fell to his shoulders, a few unruly strands slipping over his forehead. His fingers moved across the pages of an ancient book with a gentleness that felt almost reverent, as if he were touching something alive. He didn't notice her, or maybe he was pretending not to. He didn't speak, but Victoria felt as if the room itself was speaking to her, vibrating with tension, waiting. The boy slowly lifted his gaze and looked straight into her eyes. His irises were an unusual color, brown but threaded with something else, something golden. Then she heard the whisper, not from his lips, not from the room, from everywhere. "Victoria, Victoria, they're all waiting for you." Her heart raced. She wanted to speak, but her mouth wouldn't open. She couldn't move, couldn't even breathe. The boy closed the book. He stood, and suddenly everything began to collapse. The stone walls crumbled as if blown apart by an invisible force. Shadows swallowed the light. The whisper grew louder, echoing now like her own thoughts inside her head. "They're all waiting for you." The car moved steadily along the highway, trees growing denser with every mile. Heavy clouds swallowed the August sky, and the air carried that unmistakable scent of an approaching storm mixed with damp earth. The asphalt twisted like a dark ribbon through land that felt forgotten by time, a place where phone signal weakened and the landscape shifted into something raw and mountainous. Victoria stared at the road ahead. She sat curled in the passenger seat of her mother's car, knees pulled up, a gas station coffee warming her hands, tension tightening her stomach. "Mom," she said after a long stretch of silence, "how long am I supposed to stay there?" Her mother kept her eyes on the road, but tightened her grip on the steering wheel. "For now, just the school year," she said quietly. "We'll see what happens after that. It depends on my work. I have several longer business trips planned. I wouldn't be able to take care of you properly." "Mm-hmm," Victoria nodded, though she didn't feel reassured at all. "And Dad? How's he doing?" "He's good. He runs the only furniture store in the valley now. It's actually doing really well. People are always building or renovating. It's a solid business for such a small town." Victoria turned toward the window, watching the trees blur past. "So, I don't have to work?" "No, sweetheart, unless you want to. Maybe at a cafe, maybe with your dad. We'll see. But that's not something you need to worry about right now. School comes first. So I'll be going to school with my old friends. You should. You're all in the same year. Carolina, you remember Natalia and Nadia's mom, said the girls were really excited when they heard you were coming back." Victoria went quiet. She swallowed, staring at nothing. "Natalia, Nadia, Lena, and Alex?" she asked softly. "Yes, all of them. Carolina said they never forgot you." "But I lost touch with them," Victoria said. "After we moved. I was 11. What if they're upset about that?" Her mother glanced at her briefly, with that calm certainty she only had when she truly believed what she was saying. "Real friendship can forgive a lot, Victoria," she said, "and forget even more." Victoria smiled faintly. "I wonder if they've changed," she murmured. "Alex has a band now," her mother added casually. "A rock band." "What?" Victoria raised her eyebrows. "Alex? He was obsessed with soccer. He wanted to be a professional player." "People change," her mother said. Silence settled between them again, but Victoria wasn't finished. Something had been bothering her all morning. "Mom," she said, twisting the hair tie around her wrist, "I had a strange dream." "What kind?" her mother asked cautiously. "I was in this old room. It was dark and stuffy, and there was a guy there, maybe in his early 20s. Long black hair down to his shoulders. He was holding a book and staring at me. And then," Victoria shivered. "Then I heard a whisper. It said, 'Victoria, they're all waiting for you.'" Silence fell. Strange. Longer than it should have been. "Mom? That's an interesting dream," her mother said slowly, tension creeping into her voice. "Probably just your subconscious. Fear of change, of going back. Stress can do strange things." "But it wasn't just a dream?" Victoria said, watching her mother's profile closely. "It felt real." Her mother bit her lip, but didn't answer. She didn't deny it, didn't confirm it either. She only pressed the accelerator slightly harder. Victoria looked away, back at the world beyond the window. The closer they got, the more the landscape changed. The road narrowed, winding tighter. Mountains rose in the distance. The forest thickened. Low fog hovered above the trees, even though the sun hadn't fully set yet. "Just a little farther," her mother said, glancing at her. "We're about to cross the bridge." The bridge! Victoria straightened. Something stirred inside her, as if her body sensed it before her mind did. The old wooden bridge emerged from the fog like something out of a forgotten fairy tale. Its planks looked damp and warped, as if they remembered every wheel that had ever crossed them. Rusted lanterns hung along the sides, disconnected from any visible power source, yet glowing faintly with amber light, as though they knew this wasn't an ordinary crossing. The moment the tires rolled onto the wood, everything changed. Victoria felt it instantly. A strange pressure in her chest, as if the world itself had stopped breathing. The forest fell silent. The wind died. The rain shifted into a steady, hypnotic rhythm. "Do you hear that?" Victoria whispered. "I hear," her mother murmured. "Nothing. It's always like this when you come in." Victoria didn't reply. She watched the trees. She knew them. When she was younger, they had seemed bigger, endless. But now, they looked exactly the same, as if they had been waiting. The car rolled off the bridge. The sign appeared the moment the fog parted. "Welcome to Cherry Valley, where everything has a second side." The car climbed slowly up the steep driveway, tires crunching against wet gravel. The sky had turned steel gray, and the air felt charged with a storm that hadn't arrived yet, but was coming inevitably like a silent, patient predator. Trees on both sides of the road swayed in the wind, as if something were trying to speak through them. Victoria kept glancing out the side window. The fog that had once clung low to the ground was now rising, wrapping itself around tree trunks, streetlights, and the fences of nearby houses. Finally, the car came to a stop. At the end of the driveway stood an old wooden house, 2 stories tall, with a slightly sagging porch and a dark, slanted roof. Her father's house. It sat on one of Cherry Valley's hills, part of a neighborhood that had once been lively, but now felt slightly forgotten. The shadows between the houses were deep, and the glow of streetlights no longer reached every corner. Rain began to fall. Victoria shivered and pulled her hood over her head. Her mother turned off the engine, sighed, and said with forced calm, "Well, we're here." The front door opened almost immediately. A man stepped out onto the porch. Her father. He wore a work sweater and jeans, holding a mug with steam curling from its surface. His dark hair, streaked with gray, was cut short. His face looked older than the last time Victoria had seen him, but his eyes were the same. Steel-colored, cool, and carrying a kind of tired warmth. "Hi, Victoria," he said calmly, walking over to help unload the bags from the trunk. "Hi, Dad," she replied quietly, uncertain. Their eyes met, as if for a brief second they were searching for older versions of each other. An illusion. Too much had changed. Meanwhile, her mother stepped out of the car and straightened, folding her arms across her chest. Victoria's father looked at her briefly. "Marta." "Michael." That was all. One cold name in place of a greeting. No question. No smile. No warmth. Victoria could almost feel the tension, as if the air between them had suddenly thickened. Something had happened, and neither of them intended to talk about it now. Her father opened the front door. "Let's get inside before the rain gets worse." The house smelled of wood, dampness, and something else. Something Victoria couldn't name. The floorboards creaked beneath her steps as she carried her bag upstairs to her room. The walls were pale wood, the window overlooking the forest. Old furniture, a bed, a shelf, a desk. Then she noticed something strange. On the wall, near the doorframe, a symbol had been carved into the wood. Barely visible, etched carefully, as if someone had taken their time with a knife. An oval, split vertically by a jagged line. She froze. Her fingers brushed over it. It wasn't new, and it wasn't random. Her mind flashed back to the book from her dream. The same shape had appeared on one of its pages. Mediators. The word echoed faintly in her memory, though she didn't know where it had come from. Rain struck the window. She looked outside. The wind tore through the treetops, leaves spinning wildly as the streetlight flickered. The entire valley seemed to breathe heavily, as if struggling to accept her presence. Not exactly a warm welcome, she muttered to herself, frowning. Almost like it doesn't want me back. She sat on the bed and began unpacking, tossing clothes into drawers on autopilot. Then, "Victoria, they need you." She froze. A voice, a whisper. Close. Too close, from outside the window. Victoria jumped to her feet and rushed to the glass, throwing it open. Cold, damp wind surged into the room, but there was no one there. Only the trees, twisting in the wind, and darkness. She slammed the window shut and leaned against the sill, breathing hard. "It's just stress," she told herself, forcing calm into her voice. Mom was right. Just stress. Nothing else. But beneath her skin, deep inside, she felt that familiar, unsettling ache. Something was calling her, and Cherry Valley hadn't forgotten. The rain had stopped, but the sky still hung low and heavy over Cherry Valley, like it was just waiting for an excuse to start crying again. Victoria's mom had an early trip in the morning. She could feel the tension in her, like she wanted to say something, but decided it was safer to say nothing at all. They stood by the front door. Victoria's father had disappeared somewhere, probably the basement. Just the two of them, like always. "If anything happens, I'll call," her mom said, adjusting the collar of her coat. "And you call too, okay? If you know, if you need anything." Victoria nodded a little too fast. "Yeah." A short silence settled between them. "It'll be fine," her mom added, like she was trying to convince herself more than Victoria. "You're smart. You'll handle it. And your dad, he doesn't say much, but he cares. You two will figure it out." "Sure," Victoria shrugged. "Probably." Her mom hugged her, brief, tight, like she was trying to transfer everything she couldn't say into that one moment. Then she got into the car, started the engine, and drove away without looking back. Victoria stayed in the doorway for a long time, watching the taillights disappear. It felt like something had ended, or started. The day with her dad went faster than she expected. They unpacked her things together, carrying boxes up and down the stairs, stacking books, hanging clothes, finding places on shelves for pieces of Warsaw. In between, they talked logistics. School started in less than a week, and all the paperwork had already been handled by her dad and the principal at the local high school. "There's always something in the fridge," he said when Victoria drifted into the kitchen. "Sometimes I cook, but I'm usually at the store all day. If you're hungry, don't be weird about it. Make whatever you want." "Thanks," she said. "I actually like cooking. I learned a little in Warsaw." "That's good," he said, and for the first time, his mouth almost curved into a smile. "Maybe you'll teach me something." That evening, they sat in the living room with mugs of hot tea, the TV buzzing in the background. They talked. Victoria about school, friends, Warsaw streets, and fast trams. Her dad about the small store, the customers, how life here moved like it was stuck on a slower setting. But people could still surprise you. Some stories were funny. Some were weird. A few ended with unfinished edges, like he didn't want to say too much. They didn't talk about the divorce, or why they'd barely seen each other for years. But the evening stayed calm, warm, almost normal. The next morning, right after breakfast, her dad handed Victoria a few wrinkled bills. They looked like they'd been sitting in an emergency jar for years. "Need anything for school? Notebooks, pens, paint?" he asked. "Go to Between the Lines. Mrs. Raiska still runs it." He handed her a rolled receipt with an address written on the back, like he didn't trust memory alone. "They've got everything." Victoria dressed warmly, even though it was still late August. In the mountains, cold crept through mornings like an unwanted guest. When she closed the gate behind her, she saw Cherry Valley washed in gold and gray. Trees along the main road had started dropping leaves, thin, pale gold ones that barely brushed the asphalt. The sun hadn't broken through the clouds, which hung low over rooftops like someone had stretched an old ash-colored sheet across the town. Victoria walked slowly, relearning the streets like old faces. Familiar, but not the same. A new wall covered in graffiti. A bench where she and Alex used to eat ice cream. The same rusted bell by the school that looked more decorative than functional. She passed a small bakery that hadn't existed when she left. It smelled like sweet bread and cinnamon. She hesitated, then kept going. At the corner, just before the store, she noticed a group of kids playing at the town playground. Their laughter rang bright and careless. She stopped. For a second, a memory flickered. Herself at maybe 7, racing around the same carousel with Natalia and Nadia. The carousel was painted blue now, but it was the same one. Lost in thought, she stepped sideways and collided with someone, hard enough that she stumbled. When she looked up, she met a pair of green eyes glinting in the shadow of a hood. The boy looked a year or two older, tall and lean, with pale, almost silver hair and a sharp jawline. He smiled, warm, almost amused. "Sorry," Victoria mumbled, adjusting her bag strap. "I wasn't watching where I was going." "It's okay," he said calmly. "Just be careful. Sometimes the world hits back harder than you expect." Victoria lifted her brows, caught off guard by how strange that sounded, but she didn't respond. "Yeah, I'll try," she said quietly. He watched her for a second longer, like he was memorizing her face, or comparing it to something he already knew. "Take care," he said, then turned and headed toward the town square. Victoria watched him go, and then she saw it. On the back of his navy hoodie, right between his shoulder blades, a subtle mark, an infinity symbol, faint and almost easy to miss. The same symbol she'd seen in Warsaw, painted on walls, in the subway, once even at a bus stop. She'd assumed it was just some trend. A coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe not. The wooden sign above the shop, slightly faded, swung gently in the wind. Between the Lines. Victoria paused before pushing the heavy, creaking door open. Inside, the scent hit her instantly. Paper, ink, and something else. Tea, maybe? The kind of smell that belonged to this place. For a second, it felt like time rewound. Behind the counter stood a woman in her 40s, red hair in a loose bun, glasses perched low on her nose. She looked up from a notepad and broke into a wide smile. "Well, look who it is," she called, stepping out from behind the counter. "Victoria, right?" "Yeah," Victoria said, unsure. "I was at your dad's place 2 days ago for office chairs," the woman said brightly. "He told me you were coming back. And you know how it is in the valley. News spreads faster than birds over the square. Half the town probably already knows you're back." Victoria let out a quiet laugh, shaking her head. "That's so different from Warsaw," she said. "There, everyone lives like they're invisible. No one cares." "Well, sweetheart," the woman said warmly, "you can forget privacy here. Everyone knows everyone. But don't worry, there are perks. Victoria nodded and wandered between the shelves. The wooden floor creaked under her steps. The aisles were packed with notebooks, books, school supplies, and the little things she'd need. She stopped by a shelf of journals. One thick notebook, burgundy with a hard cover, caught her eye. A simple silver word was stamped on the front. Whispers. Whispers, she repeated silently. Something about it pulled at her, even though she couldn't explain why. Like her hand moved before her mind did. She dropped it into her basket. Victoria? She spun around. A girl stood beside her with blonde, shoulder-length hair and a round, well-kept face. She looked curious and a little amused. Yeah, Victoria, Victoria said cautiously. Do we know each other? The girl smiled. It's me. Lena. You don't remember me, do you? It's been 6 years. I don't blame you. Victoria squinted, studying her. The face was familiar, but different. And then it hit her. Lena. Her old elementary school friend. Back then, Lena had been quieter. Smaller, somehow. Easy to overlook. Now she looked like someone who could walk into school and instantly belong. Confident, put together, almost magnetic. Lena? Oh my God. Victoria stared. You look so different. For the better, I hope. Lena grinned. Definitely, Victoria said, and meant it. They sat together in a small reading nook, their conversation slipping into place as if the 6-year gap didn't exist. As if time had just evaporated. Victoria talked about Warsaw. Crowds, traffic, tall buildings, fast people. Lena listened, smiling. Not much changes here, Lena said finally. A few new shops, some renovations. But mostly, it's boring. Maybe that's what I need, Victoria admitted softly. Boring, stable, feeling like someone actually knows me. Oh, everyone will know you here, Lena said with a smile. And Natalia and Nadia can't wait to see you. You're still close with them? Of course, like always. And Alex is still around too, but... Lena hesitated. But what? Victoria asked. He's kind of distant lately, like he's pulled away. He's alone a lot. Maybe because of the band. Band? Light rock, Lena said. Him, Leon, and Dawood. They play sometimes at Hard Beer. They're good, but Alex is totally in his lone wolf era. Victoria nodded, warmth spreading through her at the thought that, somehow, the group had stayed together. You know what? Lena said suddenly, standing. There's someone you need to meet. I work with him at a cafe. He's on shift right now. Want to walk over? Sure, Victoria shrugged. I don't have any plans. They gathered their purchases and stepped outside together. The wind picked up again, rustling the leaves beneath their feet. And even though it was only her first day back in town, Victoria realized that, for the first time, she actually felt good here. The town stretched lazily beneath the warm afternoon sun. The streets looked like something straight out of a postcard. Cobblestone paths lined with rows of trees already shedding their first yellow leaves. Victoria and Lena walked side by side toward the town square, where the cafe Sweet Moments was located, one of the most charming places in Cherry Valley. Do you only work there during the summer? Victoria asked, glancing at her friend with curiosity. Or are you staying on once school starts? I'm staying, Lena replied with a small shrug. I'll work after classes too. My grandpa passed away 3 years ago, and now it's just me and my grandma. Her pension barely covers the basics, so, I have to manage on my own. Victoria looked at her with concern. I'm really sorry, Lena. Your grandpa was such a good man. I still remember how he used to make us homemade popcorn on your balcony. Yeah, a lot has changed, Victoria. A lot of people are gone, but that's just how it is. They stepped into the town square, an open plaza surrounded by old buildings, a fountain at its center, cafe umbrellas scattered around outdoor tables. Sweet Moments stood out with its light green awning and pastel logo written in elegant, decorative lettering. As soon as they entered, the scent of freshly ground coffee and cinnamon wrapped around them. Behind the counter stood a broad-shouldered guy with reddish hair, clearly athletic. He wore a light shirt with the sleeves rolled up, glasses perched on his nose, giving him a slightly intellectual look. When he noticed Lena, his face lit up. "Hey," Lena greeted him casually. "Hey, girls," he replied with a smile. They approached the counter. "What are you doing here? Aren't you off today?" he asked, raising an eyebrow playfully. "I wanted you to meet someone," Lena said. "This is Victoria, my old friend. I told you about her. She's back for the year." Victoria felt a faint blush warm her cheeks. "I hope she didn't say anything bad about me." "Only good things," he assured her, extending his hand. "Daniel." "Victoria," she replied, shaking it. "Want me to make you some coffee? On the house?" he offered with a mischievous grin. "Lactose-free cappuccino," they said at the same time, and laughed. "Well, look at that. Kindred spirits," Daniel chuckled, already turning to prepare their drinks. A few minutes later, Victoria and Lena sat by the window. The cafe was nearly empty. Just an elderly couple in the corner and a woman working on her laptop. With no customers to attend to, Daniel brought their drinks over on a tray. "Thanks, Danny," Lena said. "No problem." "Tell me something about yourself," Victoria said encouragingly. Lena answered for him. "Daniel moved here 2 years ago with his parents. They're lawyers, opened a firm on Church Street, and his uncle, Gabriel Trembleski. You might recognize the name. He's the mayor now." "Seriously," Victoria said, surprised. "I've seen that name on campaign posters, but I had no idea he was your uncle." Daniel lifted his brows, slightly embarrassed. "Yeah, it just kind of happened." "So where did you move from?" Victoria asked. "Krakow," he replied, sitting sideways on a chair. "I get how you're feeling, Victoria. Big city to a place like this. It's a big adjustment, but you can grow to like it." They talked for a while, about school, people, music. Then the cafe door chimed softly, and a man walked in. He looked to be in his early 50s, still in good shape, with short hair streaked with gray, an elegant shirt, and a messenger bag slung over his shoulder. His gaze swept across the room and stopped on Victoria. There was something unsettling in the way he looked at her. Not obvious. As if he were trying to recognize her, or already did. "Good afternoon," Lena said politely. "Mr. Principal, what brings you here on such a sunny day?" Daniel asked with a smile, standing up. "Wouldn't it be better to relax with family?" The man returned the smile, but it was a little too charming. "If I had one, I'd probably be by the water right now," he said lightly. "But for now, coffee and cozy places like this will have to do." He walked to the counter, and Daniel began preparing his drink without being asked. "The usual?" "Mm-hmm." The man took a seat in the corner and pulled a thick political magazine from his bag. Victoria watched him closely. Something about him made her uneasy. She leaned toward Lena and whispered, "The principal?" Lena nodded. "He's new. Came in halfway through last year, after Mrs. Malewska had to leave for rehab. Some say Rockwov, others Warsaw. No one really knows. There's something off about him," Victoria murmured, unable to look away. He's quiet, mysterious, rarely shows up, barely attends assemblies. But students like him, he's laid back, gives more days off, allows trips, and no family. Supposedly moved here from the coast. Hardly anyone knows anything about him. That feeling returned. The same one Victoria had experienced earlier that day, when the stranger in the navy hoodie had looked at her on the street. The same unsettling sense of being recognized. As if they knew her, as if they knew something about her. But that was impossible, right? The girls finished the last of their coffee when Lena suddenly brightened. "Hey, let's take a picture," she said, pulling out her phone and switching to selfie mode. "I'll send it to the girls. Let them know you're back." Victoria leaned closer, smiling. Click. Lena typed quickly, then posted the photo to Snapchat with the caption, "Guess who's back?" They didn't have to wait long. Lena's phone buzzed just seconds later. A surprised emoji from Natalia popped up on the screen, followed immediately by a location pin. "They're at the school field," Lena said, already playing the short voice message. Natalia's voice came through clearly. "We're here with Nadia and Alex. The guys are warming up before the game. Come join us." Lena shot Victoria a mischievous smile. "Come on, it's close. You'll see. They'll be happy." "Sure," Victoria agreed, feeling a flicker of excitement. They gathered their things and got ready to leave. Just as they reached the door, Daniel leaned out from behind the counter. "If you're still hanging around after I finish my shift, maybe I'll join you," he said. "Definitely," Lena replied. Outside, the warm afternoon sunlight spilled across the cobblestone sidewalks. They passed old townhouses and small shops, and in the distance, the familiar facade of the high school came into view. "In a few days, we'll be walking here every single day again," Lena said, pointing toward the building. "Second home, seriously." "I keep wondering how much everything has changed," Victoria replied. "Some things have, but when it comes to girls, they're still themselves." Lena smiled to herself. Natalia is still a star. She's the queen of the school. Guys are obsessed with her. Girls copy her. She's confident, stylish, strong, and she's the volleyball team captain now. But it hasn't gone to her head. She's still got that laid-back vibe. "And Nadia?" Victoria asked. "Still in her sister's shadow, at least on the surface. But I think she doesn't mind anymore. She's found her own path. She's head of the student council, top of her class. People respect her. Honestly, if Natalia suddenly stopped wearing makeup or Nadia started, you wouldn't even be able to tell them apart. They still pull those twins pranks where they switch roles." "That's so them," Victoria laughed. "What about the guys? Is either of them seeing someone?" "Natalia changes boys like nail polish colors. Flirts, has fun, but never lets anyone get too close. Like she's not ready or something. She's always the one who breaks it off." "What about Nadia?" Victoria pressed, intrigued. "With her, it's different," Lena said slowly. "She is still single, but don't be surprised if Alex is usually around her. I don't really know how to explain it, but they have specific kind of bond. It's not romantic or anything. They just care about each other, in a way you probably wouldn't expect." Victoria frowned. "Seriously? Nadia and Alex?" "I remember when we were kids. Alex used to tease her all the time, even if it was meant in a friendly way. And Nadia always pushed back. She never let him get away with anything." Victoria shook her head slightly. "Natalia actually used to think they didn't even like each other at all." "Maybe that's true," Lena said quietly. "I remember how close you and Alex used to be, but when you left, things started to fall apart for a while." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Alex became a bit of a lone wolf. kept to himself, and I lost touch with the girls for a short time too. Everything felt off, like the balance between us was gone. Lena shrugged lightly, but eventually we realized it was easier, better, when we stuck together. She went on, her voice softer now. A year after you moved away, Alex started having serious trouble at school. His grades dropped, and his parents were putting a lot of pressure on him. And Nadia, despite their past, despite all those childhood clashes, was the one who reached out. Lena smiled faintly at the memory. She told him she'd help, that she'd tutor him, pull him up in the subjects he was failing. They started meeting one-on-one every now and then, just to study. And a few months later, Alex managed to fix all his grades. She glanced at Victoria. He was incredibly grateful. He kept saying he owed her, like a real debt. Lena took a breath before continuing. When we finished middle school and moved on to high school, things flipped. Nadia had a really rough start. Unlike Natalie, who found her place almost immediately, Nadia felt like an outsider. We ended up in different classes, so even when I wanted to help her, I couldn't do much. Her expression darkened slightly. Apparently, the guys in her class picked on her a lot, made fun of her, pulled stupid, cruel jokes. And Nadia being Nadia, she didn't tell anyone. Not her sister, not her mom, not even me. She hesitated. Alex was the first one to find out. Completely by accident. But once he didn't hesitate. Lena exhaled softly. By then, Alex had already built a reputation in the new school. Like Natalie, he'd become popular fast, but also kind of intimidating. You know, because of his personality. She gave a small, knowing smile. He stood up for Nadia, warned everyone in her class and beyond that if anyone had a problem with her, they'd have a problem with him too. Victoria frowned slightly. It sounds like that's how he's trying to repay her. Lena nodded slowly. That's exactly how it was. He became her guardian angel at school, and it's stayed that way ever since. Nadia helps him with classes, and Alex treats her like a younger sister. Victoria smiled faintly. That actually sounds kind of sweet. Well, I guess even though my leaving caused a lot of chaos, it also helped bring them closer in the end. Lena shook her head gently. But don't blame yourself. What happened after you left wasn't your fault. That's just life. We were kids back then. We started growing up, changing, figuring out who we were. And sometimes you have to lose something to understand how much it actually matters to you. That's exactly what happened with our group. They were almost at the field when Victoria suddenly stopped. A cold shiver ran down her spine. A whisper echoed in her ears, quiet but unmistakably clear. Victoria, the darkness has awakened. You are not safe. She froze, turning sharply as if expecting someone to be standing right behind her. Her heart began to race. Did you hear that? She asked nervously, turning to Lena. Lena looked up from her phone, confused. Hear what? I didn't say anything. Someone said my name, Victoria whispered, scanning the trees and buildings around them. And something else. Like a warning. Lena raised an eyebrow, then laughed softly. Maybe ghosts, she joked. That's not funny, Victoria said quietly. Lately, I don't feel like myself. I see weird things. I hear things. Her voice wavered despite her attempt to sound calm. Lena tilted her head. Maybe it's just stress? That's what everyone keeps saying. Mom. Dad. Victoria forced a small smile. I tell myself the same thing, but it doesn't actually make it better. She exhaled softly. Anyway, forget it. It'll probably pass. It always does. She didn't want Lena to think she was losing her mind. She didn't want to give a name to something she didn't understand. And yet, deep down, the unease refused to let go. Ghosts? Sure. And what's next? Angels and demons? Maybe a magical fairy while we're at it? She thought bitterly. But even as she mocked the idea, a quiet truth stirred beneath the sarcasm. What if it wasn't her imagination at all? Lena studied her for a moment longer, her smile fading just slightly, then bumped Victoria's shoulder with her own. "Hey," she said lightly. "You've barely been back a day. Give yourself time. Cherry Valley has a way of getting under your skin." Victoria nodded, though the words did little to ease the tension coiled inside her. Because the whisper hadn't sounded like stress. It had sounded like a warning. The field was already within sight when the girls turned the corner by the school wall. Victoria noticed a group of boys running across the heated surface, sweaty, focused, fully engaged. Among them, Alex stood out immediately. He moved with confidence, barking short, firm commands. There was no doubt he was the one in charge, like a captain on his own battlefield. A few girls were sitting on the bleachers, but two of them drew particular attention. The twins. One of them, with long, perfectly styled black hair cascading freely down her back, glossy in the sunlight, bold makeup and deep red lipstick, looked as if she'd just stepped out of a fashion magazine. She wore tight leggings and a fitted top that highlighted her figure, and every few seconds she flirted with one of the boys on the field. She winked at him, and he responded with a blown kiss. Beside her sat the other twin, same dark hair, but pulled into a neat, high braid. Her face was almost makeup-free, delicate, framed by thin glasses with dark rims. She wore a pastel blouse and a light, flowing skirt. Modest, but put together. Leaning over a notebook, she was writing something with intense focus, as if the rest of the world had temporarily ceased to exist. Victoria and Lena approached quietly from behind. "And here we are," Lena said with a playful note in her voice. The twins spun around sharply. Their eyes widened in shock, then instantly lit up with joy. Both jumped to their feet at the same time and threw their arms around Victoria, nearly knocking her over. "We can't believe it," Natalia exclaimed. "You're really here." "We thought you'd forgotten all about us," Nadia added, just as emotional. "I'm sorry," Victoria mumbled, returning the hug. "I know we kind of lost touch after I moved away." "Oh, stop it," Natalia cut in, pulling back slightly but still holding her hand. "What matters is that you're back." "Exactly," Nadia agreed. "You're not getting away from us now." They all sat down together on the bleachers. The girls immediately started firing questions at Victoria. What life in the capital had been like, what the people were like, how school was, whether she'd made new friends. "And the capital guys?" Natalia asked, that familiar sparkle in her eye. "Are they really as handsome as everyone says?" Victoria laughed. "The same as everywhere else," she said. "Maybe just more into themselves. Total attention seekers." Natalia rolled her eyes with theatrical exaggeration. Just then, Alex jogged up to the bleachers. He was drenched in sweat, cheeks flushed, hair tousled. He grabbed a towel from the front row, wiped his neck and forehead, then took a few long gulps from a plastic water bottle. "Well, well, look who finally showed up," he said with a grin, looking straight at Victoria. "I thought it was just a rumor." He opened his arms wide. "Come on, say hello properly. It's been years." Victoria stood up and walked over to him. She hugged him briefly but warmly. When his arm wrapped around her for just a fraction of a second, everything came rushing back. Alex, one of her closest childhood friends. Now, looking at him, she finally understood what Lena meant. He really had changed. He had always been that guy. The one every girl in class looked at, with admiration, curiosity, quiet crushes. Even as a kid, he stood out among his peers, not just because of his confidence and charisma, but because of something harder to define, a natural charm that pulled people in like a magnet. His looks had always been different, too. Exotic, unusual for a place like Cherry Valley. Alex was half Japanese, his mother Polish, and his father, originally from Japan, had settled here even before he was born. As long as Victoria could remember, they had run a modern dental clinic together, the best in town, spoken of with a certain respect. Pale, cool-toned skin, dark eyes set beneath slightly slanted lids, straight black hair that always fell into a perfectly imperfect mess. Alex's appearance caught attention not only because of his heritage, but because of the way he moved, the way he spoke, the way he looked at people, as if he was always half a step ahead of the moment. Even as a child, there had been something rebellious about him. He ignored teachers when it suited him, could be sharp-tongued, hated being lectured. And yet, or maybe because of it, girls gravitated toward him. Victoria remembered sneaking glances at him when she was 10, like he was some kind of local celebrity. And now? Now he was more attractive than ever. Effortlessly handsome, older, sharper around the edges. Not a boy anymore, but someone who knew exactly who he was, and didn't need to prove it to anyone. Victoria sat back down on the bleachers, a soft, unfamiliar warmth spreading through her chest. It really did feel good. For a moment she forgot how nervous she'd been about coming back to Cherry Valley. And yet, everyone was here. Still together. Still themselves, even if older. And, most importantly, they remembered her. Laughter, casual teasing, familiar voices. All of it made the tension she'd been carrying since her arrival slowly begin to fade. "So," Alex said, turning toward her, "what's life like in a big city? Is it really as loud as people say?" Victoria smiled faintly. "There's always something happening, sometimes too much," she admitted. "You get used to it, but—" She hesitated. "I didn't realize how much I missed the quiet." Alex nodded, as if he understood exactly what she meant. "Cherry Valley can be quiet to a fault," he said, "but that doesn't always mean peaceful." Before she could ask what he meant, the referee's whistle cut sharply through the air, and the game resumed. Alex jumped to his feet and ran back onto the field, rejoining his team. Victoria watched the match without much focus, until something on the opposite side of the field made her heart skip. A player from the opposing team. Tall, lean. He moved differently from the others, quieter, almost fluid. On the back of his jersey was the number 8. She froze. It was him. The same boy she had bumped into earlier on the street. The same presence. Even the way he turned his head felt unmistakably familiar. Victoria leaned toward Natalia, lowering her voice. "Nat, do you see that guy?" she whispered. "On the other team, number 8. Do you recognize him from school?" Natalia frowned and looked toward the field, squinting. "Number 8?" she repeated. "Hold on." She scanned the players, her gaze moving carefully across the field. "I don't see anyone like that," she said at last, clearly confused. "Are you sure?" A tight knot formed in Victoria's stomach. "He was right there," she said quietly, more to herself than to Natalie, and looked again. And then she realized there was no number 8. The opposing team was complete, but the boy she had seen just seconds ago was gone, as if he had never been there at all. "That's strange," she murmured. At that exact moment, her phone vibrated in her jacket pocket. That was a message from her dad. "Where are you? It's getting late," she replied quickly. "I'm at the school field with friends. Don't worry, I'll be home before 10. She slipped the phone away, trying to focus on the game again, on the shouts from the field, on the normalcy of the moment. But deep down, she knew one thing. It hadn't been her imagination, and the Cherry Valley had just begun to show her something she didn't yet understand.
Whispers in the rafters, whispers in the trees, secrets in the soul.